The moment Zelda Morgan opened her eyes to find herself alone in the snow, she knew her cousins had finally made good on their threat to be rid of her. Dawn broke cold and cruel over the Wyoming Territory in January of 1879, painting the endless white landscape in shades of pink and gold that would have been beautiful if Zelda had not been freezing to death. Her fingers were already numb, her lips blue, and the thin traveling dress she wore might as well have been made of paper for all the protection it offered against the bitter wind that howled down from the mountains. She had fallen asleep in the covered wagon the night before, trusting that her cousin Margaret and Margaret's husband would take her to Denver as promised. Instead, they had dumped her here like refuse, taking her small trunk of belongings and the money her mother had left her. Zelda struggled to her feet, her legs shaking from cold and shock. She could see wagon tracks leading away in the snow, already beginning to fill in with fresh powder. The sky overhead was gray with the promise of more snow to come. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried to think. There had been a town somewhere behind them, maybe 5 miles back. Or had it been 10? Everything had looked the same in the darkness. She started walking, following the wagon tracks backward, her boots crunching through the crusty top layer of snow and sinking into the softer powder beneath. Each step was an effort. Her teeth chattered so hard her jaw ached. She had never known cold like this. Growing up in St. Louis, winter had meant staying indoors by the fire, not fighting for survival in a frozen wasteland. How long she walked, Zelda could not say. Time seemed to stretch and compress. The sun rose higher but gave no warmth. Her feet went numb, then her legs. She fell once, twice, 3 times. The third time she was not sure she could get back up. Her body felt heavy, her mind foggy. She thought of her mother, dead these 6 months past from consumption. She thought of her father, lost to the war when she was just a child. She thought that perhaps it would not be so terrible to simply close her eyes and sleep. Then she heard it. The steady clip-clop of horse hooves, the creak of leather, the jingle of spurs. Zelda lifted her head, trying to focus her blurred vision. A rider was approaching, a dark figure against the white landscape. She tried to call out, but her voice came as barely a whisper. She tried to wave, but her arm would not rise. All she could do was kneel there in the snow and hope. The rider drew closer, and Zelda could make out more details. A man, tall in the saddle, wearing a heavy sheepskin coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. A red bandana covered the lower half of his face against the cold. He rode a large roan horse that picked its way carefully through the snow. The man must have seen her, because he urged his horse into a faster walk. When he was perhaps 20 feet away, he reined in and dismounted in one smooth motion. He approached cautiously, as if she might be some kind of trap, but when he got close enough to see her properly, his entire demeanor changed. "Jesus Christ," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. He pulled down the bandana, revealing a strong jaw darkened with several days of stubble. "What the hell happened to you?" Zelda tried to answer, but her lips would not form words. She could only look up at him with pleading eyes. The man did not waste time with more questions. He shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then scooped her up as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. Zelda found herself pressed against a warm chest, feeling the steady beat of a heart beneath her cheek. The man carried her to his horse and somehow managed to mount while still holding her. He settled her across his lap, tucking his coat more firmly around her. "You're coming home with me," he said firmly, as if there could be no argument. He kicked the horse into a trot, one arm locked around Zelda to keep her secure. Zelda wanted to thank him, to explain, to do something other than shiver helplessly against him. but the warmth of his body and the rhythmic motion of the horse were already pulling her toward unconsciousness. She fought it for a few minutes, but eventually exhaustion and cold won out and she knew nothing more. When Zelda woke, she was warm. That was her first thought. Her second was that she was in a bed, a real bed with thick quilts piled on top of her. Her third thought came when she tried to move and discovered that every muscle in her body ached fiercely. "Easy now," said a voice, and Zelda turned her head to see a woman approaching the bed. She was perhaps 40, with graying brown hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes. "You have been out for near 12 hours. You need to take it slow." "Where am I?" Zelda managed to ask. Her voice came out as a croak. "Quinn Kelly's ranch, about 8 miles north of Pine Bluffs, Wyoming," the woman said. She sat on the edge of the bed and felt Zelda's forehead with a practiced hand. "I am Mary Keller, Quinn's housekeeper. He found you this morning, nearly frozen to death. Another hour and you would have been gone. Pine Bluffs." Zelda tried to remember her geography. She thought it was somewhere near the Nebraska border, which meant she was even further from Denver than she had been. "I need to explain," Zelda started, but Mary shook her head. "First you need to drink some broth and get your strength back," Mary said firmly. "Quinn said you can explain everything when you are feeling better. For now, you just rest." She left and returned a few minutes later with a steaming bowl. She helped Zelda sit up, propping pillows behind her, and fed her the broth spoonful by spoonful. It was rich and savory, made from beef and vegetables, and Zelda thought she had never tasted anything so wonderful in her life. "How are your fingers and toes?" Mary asked when the bowl was empty. "Any sharp pains or numbness?" Zelda wiggled them experimentally. They ached, but she could feel them all. "They hurt, but I can feel them." "Good," Mary said with satisfaction. "That means no frostbite. You are a lucky young woman, Miss Morgan," Zelda supplied. "Zelda Morgan." "Well, Miss Morgan, you rest now. I will check on you in a few hours." Zelda wanted to protest, to insist she needed to get up and figure out what to do next, but her body had other ideas. The moment Mary left and the room grew quiet again, sleep pulled her back under. When she woke the second time, it was dark outside the window, but a lamp burned low on the table beside the bed. Zelda felt much better, stronger, though still weak. She managed to sit up on her own and look around the room properly for the first time. It was a simple space, but well made and clean. The bed was solid pine, the quilts were beautiful examples of careful handiwork, and there was a dresser, a chair, and a small table. The walls were logs chinked with clay, and a braided rug covered the wooden floor. Through the window, Zelda could see snow still falling steadily. The door opened quietly, and a man entered. Zelda recognized him immediately, even without the coat and hat. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build. His hair was dark brown, worn a bit long, and his eyes were an unusual shade of gray-blue. He looked to be in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most. He moved with the careful grace of someone who was comfortable in his own skin. "You are awake," he said, and Zelda recognized the rough, kind voice from the snow. "How are you feeling?" "Much better, thanks to you," Zelda said. "I am told your name is Quinn Kelly. I am Zelda Morgan, and I owe you my life." Quinn waved a dismissive hand and pulled the chair closer to the bed, settling into it. "Any decent person would have done the same. What I want to know is what you were doing out there alone in a blizzard." Zelda took a breath and told him the whole sorry story. How her mother had died 6 months earlier, leaving Zelda alone in the world with only a small inheritance. How her cousin Margaret had written, offering to take Zelda in, suggesting they could travel together to Denver, where Margaret's husband had business prospects. How Zelda had trusted them, only to realize too late that they had only wanted access to her money. How they must have drugged her somehow the night before because she had fallen asleep in the wagon and woken alone in the snow. They took everything, Zelda finished bitterly. My trunk, my money, everything my mother left me. Quinn's expression grew darker as she spoke, his jaw tightening. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Did they say where in Denver they were headed?" "No," Zelda admitted. "I do not even know if Denver was truly their destination." Quinn nodded slowly. "Well, the good news is they cannot have gotten far in this storm. It has been snowing steady since yesterday, and the roads will be near impassable. The bad news is we cannot go after them until it clears, and that might be days yet." "I cannot ask you to go after them," Zelda said quickly. "You have done more than enough already. Once the weather clears, perhaps you could take me to the nearest town. I will find work, earn money to get back to St. Louis." "And do what in St. Louis?" Quinn asked, not unkindly. "You said you have no family left there." Zelda had no answer for that. He was right. She had nothing to go back to. Quinn stood up. "You will stay here until you are fully recovered and we figure out a plan. Mary will take good care of you. In the meantime, you need more rest." He was at the door when Zelda called out, "Mr. Kelly, thank you, truly." He turned back and looked at her, and for the first time she saw a hint of a smile. "Quinn," he said. "Just Quinn. And you are welcome, Zelda." Over the next few days, Zelda regained her strength. Mary proved to be excellent company, a widow who had worked for Quinn for the past 5 years. She talked freely about the ranch, how Quinn had built it up from nothing after buying the land with money he had saved from working cattle drives. "He is a good man," Mary told Zelda as they sat together in the kitchen, Zelda shelling peas while Mary kneaded bread dough. "Works harder than any 2 men I know. Never asks anyone to do something he would not do himself." "Does he run the ranch alone?" Zelda asked, curious despite herself. "He has 4 hands who help with the cattle and horses," Mary said. "They stay in the bunkhouse most of the time. Good men, all of them. Quinn is picky about who he hires." Zelda had seen Quinn only in passing over those first few days. He was always working, always busy. She would see him through the window, trudging through the snow to check on the animals or catch glimpses of him in the barn. At meals, which Mary insisted Zelda take at the main table once she was strong enough to leave the bedroom, Quinn was polite but quiet, letting Mary carry most of the conversation. On the 4th day, the snow finally stopped. The sun came out, blindingly bright against the white landscape. Zelda stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the winter wonderland when Quinn came in from outside, stamping snow off his boots. "I am going to ride into Pine Bluffs tomorrow," he announced. "Talk to the sheriff, see if anyone has seen your cousins. Do you remember what they looked like?" "Their names," Zelda turned from the window. "Margaret Miller is her name now. She is maybe 30 with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her husband Walter is tall, thin, with a mustache. They were driving a covered wagon pulled by 2 bay horses." Quinn nodded, committing it to memory. "Anything else?" Zelda tried to think. Margaret had a birthmark on her left hand shaped like a star, and Walter had a scar over his right eye. "Good," Quinn said. "That is something to go on." The next morning, Zelda woke early and dressed in one of the simple work dresses Mary had lent her. Her own clothes, what little she had been wearing when Quinn found her, had been ruined by the snow. She found Quinn in the kitchen, eating a quick breakfast before his ride. "I want to come with you," Zelda said without preamble. Quinn looked up, surprised. "It is a long ride in the cold." "I am fully recovered," Zelda insisted. "And they are my cousins. I should be there to identify them if they are found." Quinn studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but we leave in 10 minutes. Dress warm." Mary helped Zelda bundle up in layers. including one of Quinn's old coats that hung nearly to her knees. They rode out just as the sun was rising, Quinn on his roan, and Zelda on a gentle mare named Daisy. The cold bit at Zelda's cheeks, but it was nothing like the killing cold she had experienced before. This was bearable, almost invigorating. Quinn set a steady pace, not too fast but not dawdling. They rode in silence for the first hour, and Zelda found herself studying him from the corner of her eye. In the bright sunlight, she could see details she had missed before. The way his hand sat easy on the reins, confident and capable. The straightness of his posture. The alertness with which he scanned their surroundings, always watchful. "You are good at this," she said finally, breaking the silence. "Riding, ranching, all of it." Quinn glanced at her. "It is what I know. Been working with cattle and horses since I was 12 years old." "Where are you from originally?" "Texas," he said. "My father had a small ranch outside San Antonio. When he died, my older brother inherited it. I decided to head north and make my own way." "Do you miss it?" "Texas," Quinn considered. "Sometimes, but Wyoming is home now. I like it here. The land is good, there is room to grow, and the winters keep out those who are not serious about making it." They reached Pine Bluffs around midday. It was a small town, maybe a few hundred people, with a main street lined with the usual establishments. A general store, a saloon, a hotel, a livery, a church, and a sheriff's office. Quinn tied their horses outside the sheriff's office and held the door open for Zelda. Inside, a man sat behind a desk, his boots propped up, reading a newspaper. He looked up when they entered and immediately swung his feet down. "Quinn," the sheriff said warmly. "What brings you to town?" "Trouble, Tom," Quinn said. "This is Miss Zelda Morgan. I found her 4 days ago, left to die in the snow by her own kin." Sheriff Tom Brenner's expression shifted from friendly to serious. He was a man in his 50s, with iron-gray hair and a weathered face. He gestured for them to sit and listened intently as Zelda repeated her story once more. When she finished, Tom leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "I hate to say it, but I did see a couple matching that description. They came through here 5 days ago, stopped at the hotel for one night. They said they were headed to Cheyenne." "Did they have a wagon?" Quinn asked. "They did. And they were selling goods at the general store. Said they were lightening their load for the journey." Zelda felt sick. They had been selling her things, her mother's things. "Is there anything we can do?" Tom sighed. "I can send a telegram to the sheriff in Cheyenne, let him know to watch for them. But the truth is, Miss Morgan, even if we catch them, proving they robbed you will be difficult. It will be your word against theirs." "They left her to die," Quinn said, his voice hard. "That is attempted murder." "I agree," Tom said. "But again, proving it in court is another matter. They will claim she left of her own accord or that there was some misunderstanding. Without witnesses or evidence, it becomes difficult." Zelda felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not cry, not here. Quinn stood. "Send the telegram. And if you hear anything, let me know immediately." Outside, Zelda took deep breaths of the cold air, trying to calm the anger and despair roiling inside her. She felt Quinn's presence beside her, solid and reassuring. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "It is not your fault," Zelda said. "You saved my life. That is more than I could have hoped for." They walked down to the general store, and Quinn asked the shopkeeper about the items Margaret and Walter had sold. Most of it was already gone, bought by other customers, but there were a few things left. A silver hairbrush that had been Zelda's mother's, a cameo brooch, a small leather-bound book of poetry. Quinn bought all 3 without hesitation, handing over cash despite Zelda's protests. "I will pay you back," she insisted as they left the store. "Somehow I will earn the money and pay you back for everything." Quinn stopped and turned to face her. Zelda, I do not want your money. I want you to stop worrying about debts and obligations. You have been through enough. But I cannot just take advantage of your kindness, Zelda protested. You are not, Quinn said firmly. You are accepting help when you need it. There is no shame in that. Now come on. Let us get some lunch before we head back. They ate at the small hotel restaurant, a simple meal of stew and cornbread. Zelda found her appetite returning despite everything, and Quinn seemed pleased to see her eat. They talked more easily now, the silence between them no longer awkward but comfortable. On the ride back to the ranch, Quinn asked her about her life in St. Louis, and Zelda found herself telling him things she had not thought about in years. Her childhood memories of her father before the war, learning to read with her mother, the small apartment they had lived in after her father died, making do on her mother's work as a seamstress. She was always so strong, Zelda said. Even when things were hard, she never complained. She just kept going, kept working, kept taking care of me. I thought she would live forever. It happened so fast, the consumption. 1 month she had a little cough, and 3 months later she was gone. I am sorry, Quinn said, and the simple sincerity in his voice made Zelda's throat tighten with emotion. Your father, Zelda said, wanting to shift the focus away from her own grief. What was he like? Quinn was quiet for a moment. Hard, he said finally. Fair but hard. He expected a lot, and he did not tolerate laziness or excuses. But he taught me everything I know about ranching. How to read the weather, how to judge cattle, how to break a horse without breaking its spirit. I did not always like him, but I respected him. You see your brother. Not in years. We did not part on good terms. He thought I was foolish to leave Texas to give up my share of the inheritance for cash and a dream. But you made it work, Zelda said. You have a successful ranch. I do, Quinn agreed, but it has been hard one. There were times, especially the first few years, when I was not sure I would make it. Bad winters, cattle disease, rustlers. But I kept going, just like your mother did. Sometimes that is all you can do. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and pink. Zelda helped Quinn unsaddle and care for the horses, and she found she enjoyed the work, the simple physical tasks that required focus but not thought. That night at dinner, Mary asked about their trip to town, and Quinn explained what they had learned. Mary's expression grew tight with anger when she heard that Margaret and Walter had been selling Zelda's things. Wicked people, Mary said firmly. I hope they get what is coming to them. Over the following weeks, Zelda settled into a routine at the ranch. She insisted on helping with the household tasks, working alongside Mary to cook and clean. She learned to bake bread, to churn butter, to preserve vegetables. Mary was a patient teacher, and Zelda found satisfaction in the work. She also spent time outside, helping where she could. Quinn was initially reluctant to let her do any ranch work, worried she was not strong enough, but Zelda proved stubborn. She learned to feed the chickens, to collect eggs, to help with the milking. When the weather was decent, she would go with Quinn to check on the cattle, riding Daisy and learning to spot signs of illness or distress in the herd. Quinn was a good teacher, patient and thorough. He explained things clearly, never making her feel foolish for not knowing. And slowly, Zelda found herself becoming more comfortable in this new world, so different from the city life she had always known. She also found herself becoming more aware of Quinn himself. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The rumble of his laugh when something truly amused him. The gentleness of his hands when he worked with the animals. The strength of his arms when he lifted heavy bales of hay. She told herself it was simple gratitude, that she was drawn to him because he had saved her life. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to suspect it was more than that. One evening in late February, after a long day of work, Zelda found Quinn standing outside the barn, looking up at the stars. The sky was clear for once, a deep velvet black scattered with countless points of light. "Beautiful, is it not?" Zelda said, coming to stand beside him. "It is," Quinn agreed. "I never get tired of looking at it. Makes you feel small in a good way, you know. Reminds you that your problems are not as big as they seem." Zelda looked up, following his gaze. "In St. Louis, you could barely see the stars, too much smoke and light from the city." "I could not live like that," Quinn said. "I need the space, the quiet." They stood in companionable silence for a few minutes. Then Quinn said, "Zelda, I have been thinking. Spring will be here in a few weeks, and I am going to need help managing things as we move into calving season and then branding. The work will be too much for Mary and me to handle alone, and I cannot spare the ranch hands from the cattle work." Zelda turned to look at him, trying to read his expression in the dim light spilling from the barn. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I would like you to stay on officially. As help. I will pay you fair wages and you would have room and board. It would give you a chance to save money, decide what you want to do." Zelda's heart beat faster. "You mean it?" "I do not say things I do not mean," Quinn said. "You are a good worker, Zelda. You learn quick and you are not afraid of hard work. I would be lucky to have you." "Then yes," Zelda said, a smile spreading across her face. "Yes, I would love to stay." Quinn smiled back, and Zelda felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the coat she wore. Spring came late to Wyoming that year, but when it finally arrived in mid-March, it brought an explosion of activity. The snow melted, turning the ranch into a muddy mess. The cattle began calving, which meant long days and sometimes nights helping with difficult births. Zelda learned more about ranching in those few weeks than she had in all the time before. She was there when a first-time mother struggled to deliver her calf, watching as Quinn gently assisted, his hands sure and steady. She was there when a calf was born weak and not breathing, and she learned to clear its airways and rub it vigorously to stimulate breath. She was there for the joy of healthy births and the sorrow of the ones that did not make it. Through it all, Quinn was patient with her, teaching her, trusting her. And Zelda found herself falling more deeply for him with each passing day. It was not just his competence or his strength, though those were certainly attractive. It was his kindness, the way he treated every living thing with respect, the way he never raised his voice in anger, even when frustrated, the way he listened when she talked, really listened, his full attention on her. One evening in early April, after a particularly long day, they sat together on the porch of the main house, watching the sunset. Mary had already gone to bed, exhausted from preparing meals for everyone. The ranch hands were in the bunkhouse. It was just the two of them, the first time they had been truly alone in weeks. "I could not have done this without you," Quinn said suddenly. "This calving season, you have been invaluable, Zelda." Zelda felt herself flush with pleasure. "I am glad I could help. I have learned so much." "You have a natural way with the animals," Quinn said. "They trust you." "I learned from the best," Zelda said, meaning it. Quinn turned to look at her, and there was something in his expression that made Zelda's breath catch. "Zelda, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" Quinn seemed to struggle for words, which was unusual for him. Finally, he said, "When I found you in the snow that day, I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, even half frozen. And as I have gotten to know you these past months, that has not changed. You are beautiful, yes, but you are also strong and smart and brave. You did not let what happened to you break you. You picked yourself up and learned a whole new way of life. I admire that. I admire you." Zelda's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Quinn must be able to hear it. "Quinn, let me finish," Quinn said gently. I know you might not feel the same way. I know you might see me as just the man who helped you or as your employer. But I had to tell you, I care for you, Zelda, more than I probably should. And if you feel anything at all similar, I would like to court you properly. Take you into town for dinner, take you on rides, get to know each other away from the work. But if you do not feel that way, I will understand. It will not change anything. You will still have a place here for as long as you want it. Zelda felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears. Quinn Kelly, you foolish man. I have been half in love with you since the first week I was here. I just did not think you could ever feel the same way about me. Quinn's face broke into the biggest smile Zelda had ever seen on him. Really, really, Zelda confirmed, laughing through her tears. Quinn reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. "May I kiss you, please?" Zelda whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but Zelda had no intention of pulling away. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and sweet and perfect. Zelda felt as if her entire body was lit up from the inside, warm and alive and right. When they finally pulled apart, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks." "Only weeks," Zelda teased. "I have been wanting it for longer than that." Quinn laughed, a deep, joyful sound, and kissed her again. Over the next few months, Quinn and Zelda courted properly, as Quinn had promised. He took her into Pine Bluffs for dinner at the hotel restaurant. They went on long rides across the ranch, Quinn showing her all his favorite spots. They attended a barn dance in town, where Zelda met more of the local community, and Quinn proudly introduced her as his sweetheart. Mary was delighted by the development, having apparently seen it coming long before either of them had confessed their feelings. The ranch hands were happy for their boss, ribbing him good-naturedly about being sweet on a woman. In May, Sheriff Brenner sent word that Margaret and Walter had been arrested in Cheyenne for attempting to sell stolen goods. It turned out Zelda was not their first victim. They had been running the same scheme for years, finding vulnerable young women and robbing them. The evidence against them was overwhelming, and they were going to prison for a long time. Zelda thought she would feel more satisfaction at the news, but instead, she just felt relief that it was over. She had built a new life here, a better life, and she had no desire to look backward. In June, with the wildflowers blooming across the Wyoming landscape, Quinn proposed. He did it simply, just the two of them on a ride, stopping at a high point that overlooked the ranch and the mountains beyond. "Zelda Morgan," he said, taking both her hands in his. "I love you with everything I am. You have made my life better in every way. Will you marry me? Will you build this life with me, not as my employee, but as my partner, my wife?" "Yes," Zelda said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Quinn. 1,000 times yes." He slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, and they kissed as the wind blew through the grass around them. The sky impossibly blue overhead. They married in July in a small ceremony at the church in Pine Bluffs. Mary stood up with Zelda, and one of Quinn's ranch hands stood up with him. Half the town turned out, eager to celebrate with the couple that many had come to know and like. Zelda wore a simple dress that she and Mary had sewn together, white cotton with lace trim. Quinn wore his best suit, looking handsome and slightly uncomfortable in the formal clothes. But when he looked at Zelda, his eyes were full of such love and joy that Zelda thought her heart might burst. "I, Quinn Kelly, take you, Zelda Morgan, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Quinn said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to love you, to honor you, to stand by you in good times and bad. I promise to build a life with you, to work beside you, to cherish you all the days of my life." Zelda repeated her own vows, meaning every word. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed her thoroughly, to the applause and cheers of everyone present. The reception was held at the ranch, with long tables set up outside and food and drink aplenty. There was music and dancing, and Zelda danced with Quinn until her feet ached. She met more neighbors, accepted congratulations and well wishes, and felt truly part of the community for the first time. That night, in the bedroom that had been Zelda's but was now theirs, Quinn made love to her with tenderness and passion. Zelda had been nervous, not knowing what to expect, but Quinn was patient and gentle, making sure she felt safe and cherished every moment. Afterward, lying in his arms, Zelda said, "I never imagined I could be this happy. When I woke up in the snow that morning, I thought my life was over, but it was actually just beginning." Quinn kissed the top of her head. "I thank God every day that I rode out that morning, that I found you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Zelda Kelly." Zelda smiled at the sound of her new name. "I love you." "I love you too," Quinn said. "Forever." The first year of their marriage was filled with hard work but also deep contentment. Zelda took on more responsibilities around the ranch, managing the household with Mary, tending the large garden they planted, and even helping with the cattle when needed. She proved to have a talent for keeping the ranch books, meticulously recording expenses and income, helping Quinn plan for the future. In the spring of 1880, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. She told Quinn one evening after dinner, nervous about how he would react. They had not discussed children explicitly, though Zelda had assumed they both wanted them eventually. Quinn's reaction exceeded her wildest hopes. His face lit up with such joy that Zelda found herself laughing even as tears spilled down her cheeks. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently, worried he might hurt her. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." Mary cried happy tears and immediately began knitting tiny clothes and blankets. The ranch hands congratulated them, and the whole ranch seemed to buzz with excitement. The pregnancy was not easy. Zelda suffered from terrible morning sickness for the first few months, and Quinn was endlessly patient, holding her hair back and bringing her cold cloths for her forehead. As she grew bigger, simple tasks became more difficult, but Zelda refused to be idle. Quinn and Mary had to watch her carefully to make sure she did not overdo it. In November of 1880, after a long and difficult labor, Zelda gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas Quinn Kelly, Thomas after Quinn's father and Quinn for his papa. Quinn cried when he held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face unashamedly. "He is perfect," he whispered, looking at Zelda with such love and gratitude that it took her breath away. "You are amazing. Thank you for this gift." Zelda, exhausted but happy, smiled up at him. "Our son." Little Thomas, or Tommy as they quickly took to calling him, was a good baby for the most part. He had his mother's dark hair and his father's gray-blue eyes. He was curious and active, always wanting to see what was happening around him. Quinn was a devoted father, helping with Tommy whenever he could. Zelda would often find him in the rocking chair in their bedroom late at night, holding their sleeping son, just watching him with wonder on his face. Life fell into a new rhythm with Tommy. Zelda learned to balance motherhood with her work, often carrying Tommy in a sling as she did chores. Quinn built a cradle that he kept in the barn so Tommy could be near them when they worked. Mary doted on the baby, happy to watch him whenever Zelda needed a break. The ranch continued to prosper. Quinn's careful management and Zelda's meticulous bookkeeping meant they could invest in improvements. They built a new barn, bought more cattle, and hired an additional ranch hand. When Tommy was 2, Zelda became pregnant again. This time, she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy was somewhat easier. In the spring of 1883, she gave birth to a daughter whom they named Rose Marie Kelly. Rose was different from Tommy in every way. Where he had been active and curious, she was calm and observant. She had Zelda's green eyes and Quinn's dark hair, and from the very beginning she seemed to study the world around her with intense focus. Tommy was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help with her, to bring her toys, to show her things. Quinn and Zelda watched their children together, often marveling at how blessed they were. In 1885, the ranch was struck by disaster. A severe winter storm killed a significant portion of the herd, and they lost almost a third of their cattle. It was a devastating blow, both financially and emotionally. Quinn worked himself nearly to exhaustion trying to save as many animals as he could, and Zelda worried constantly about the ranch's future. But they pulled through, leaning on each other and their community. Neighbors helped where they could, and Quinn and Zelda carefully managed their resources. It took 2 hard years to fully recover, but they did it together. During those difficult years, Zelda saw the full measure of the man she had married. Quinn never gave up, never lost hope, even when things looked bleakest. He worked harder than anyone, but he always made time for his family. No matter how tired he was, he always had a smile for Tommy and Rose, always had time to play with them before bed. And he never once blamed Zelda for not being able to help more with the outdoor work while she was caring for 2 young children. He valued her contributions to the household, understanding that raising children and managing a home was as vital as any work done with the cattle. In 1887, with the ranch back on solid footing, they welcomed a 3rd child, another boy they named James William Kelly. Jamie, as they called him, was a happy baby who smiled at everything and everyone. Tommy, now 7, took his role as big brother seriously, helping with both Rose and Jamie. Rose, at 4, was already showing signs of her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. The Kelly household was full of noise and activity and love. One evening, after putting the children to bed, Quinn and Zelda sat together on the porch as they so often did. It was where they had first kissed, where Quinn had first told her he loved her, and it remained their favorite place to talk and simply be together. "Do you ever think about that day?" Quinn asked, his arm around Zelda. "The day I found you, sometimes," Zelda admitted. "It feels like another lifetime, like it happened to a different person." "In a way it did," Quinn said. "We are both different people than we were then. We have grown together." Zelda looked up at him. "Do you ever regret it, taking in a half-frozen stranger?" "Your life would have been simpler without me." Quinn looked at her with such intensity that Zelda caught her breath. "Zelda Kelly, you listen to me. Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our children are everything to me. I would not change a single thing. I love you more today than I did the day I married you, and I loved you powerfully then." Zelda kissed him, pouring all her love into it. "I love you too. You saved my life that day, but you did more than that. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me everything." They sat together in the fading light, comfortable in the silence, secure in their love. In the years that followed, the Kelly Ranch continued to grow and prosper. Tommy grew into a strong, capable young man who loved ranching as much as his father did. Rose proved to have her mother's head for numbers and took over the bookkeeping when she was just 14, managing it with an efficiency that impressed everyone. Jamie was the charmer of the family, always making people laugh, but he was also a hard worker when he needed to be. In 1895, Tommy married a neighboring rancher's daughter, Sarah Coleman, and Quinn and Zelda built them a small house on the ranch property. The following year, they welcomed their first grandchild, a little girl named Emma. Zelda cried when she held her granddaughter for the first time, overcome with emotion at the continuation of the family she and Quinn had built. Quinn was an excellent grandfather, as devoted to Emma as he had been to his own children. He would carry her around the ranch, showing her everything, talking to her even though she was too young to understand. Zelda would watch them together, her heart full to bursting. Rose married in 1898 to a schoolteacher from Pine Bluffs, a gentle man named Robert Shaw who respected her intelligence and independence. They moved into town, where Robert continued teaching and Rose opened a small bookkeeping business, helping other ranchers and businessmen manage their finances. Jamie, ever the free spirit, left in 1900 to see more of the world. He promised to write, and he did, sending letters from Denver, San Francisco, and even as far as New York City. Zelda worried about him, but Quinn reminded her that young men needed to find their own way. Sure enough, Jamie returned 2 years later, declaring that while the world was interesting, Wyoming was home. He settled back on the ranch, working alongside his father and brother. In 1902, Quinn and Zelda celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren, now 4 in total, threw them a big party. The ranch house was full of people, laughter, and love. That evening, after everyone had gone home or gone to bed, Quinn and Zelda sat on their porch once more. They were both older now, silver threading through their hair, lines on their faces from years of sun and wind and laughter. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young people they had been, still felt the same love that had brought them together. 25 years, Zelda said softly. How did it go by so fast? I do not know, Quinn said, but I would not change a moment of it. Zelda leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you remember what you said to me that first day when you found me in the snow? Quinn smiled. I said you are coming home with me. You did, Zelda said. And you were right. I was coming home, I just did not know it yet. They sat together, watching the stars come out one by one, the same stars they had watched together for a quarter of a century. The Wyoming wind blew soft and sweet, carrying the scent of grass and sage. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and closer, they could hear the low sounds of cattle settling for the night. It was home, truly home, in a way Zelda had never known before that terrible morning in the snow. And it was all because one cowboy had seen a woman in need and said the words that changed both their lives forever. In 1910, as Quinn and Zelda entered their 60s, they began to slow down a bit. Quinn turned over more of the daily ranch operations to Tommy and Jamie, though he still went out every day to check on things. Zelda spent more time with their grandchildren, now 6 in total, telling them stories and teaching them to read. They built a small addition to the main house, a sun room with big windows where they could sit and enjoy the view. It became their favorite place to have coffee in the morning and watch the sunset in the evening. One morning in the spring of 1912, Zelda woke to find Quinn already up and dressed, standing at the window of their bedroom. She got up and went to him, slipping her arm around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Quinn turned to her with a smile. "I was thinking about how grateful I am. For you, for our family, for this life we built. When I was a young man in Texas, I could not have imagined this. I could not have dreamed of being this happy." "Me neither," Zelda said. "When my cousins left me in the snow, I thought my life was over. I never imagined I would find you." Quinn kissed her forehead. "We are blessed, Zelda, truly blessed." That summer, they decided to take a trip, just the two of them. They had not left the ranch for more than a day or two in years, always too busy with work and family. But Tommy and Jamie insisted they could handle things, and Rose offered to come stay and help with the cooking and household management. So Quinn and Zelda took the train to Denver, something neither of them had ever done before. They spent a week in the city, seeing the sights, eating in nice restaurants, acting like young courting folks again. It was wonderful and strange all at once, being away from the ranch and the constant demands of their life. But they were also happy to return home, to the wide skies and open spaces they loved. As the train pulled into Pine Bluffs and they saw Tommy waiting for them with the wagon, Zelda squeezed Quinn's hand. "There is nowhere else I would rather be," she said. "Me neither," Quinn agreed. As they grew older, they found new rhythms. Slower mornings, earlier nights, more time sitting on the porch, holding hands, just being together. They had been married for 37 years, and they knew each other as well as they knew themselves. Quinn's hair was completely white now, and he moved a bit stiffly in the mornings, his joints protesting the years of hard work. Zelda had her own aches and pains, but she felt blessed to have them. Each pain was a reminder that she was still here, still alive, still able to enjoy this life she had built. Their grandchildren were growing up. Emma, Tommy's eldest, was now 17 and as beautiful and capable as her grandmother. She had inherited the Kelly love of ranching and often said she wanted to stay on the ranch forever. The younger grandchildren were equally precious, each with their own personalities and dreams. In the winter of 1914, Pine Bluffs experienced one of the worst blizzards in memory. Snow fell for 3 days straight, and the temperature dropped so low that going outside was dangerous. The Kelly family hunkered down, making sure all the animals were as safe as possible and keeping the fires burning in the houses. On the third day, as the storm finally began to abate, Zelda stood at the window of their sunroom looking out at the deep snow drifts. Quinn came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her. "Reminds you of something, does it not?" he said softly. Zelda nodded, leaning back against him. 35 years ago, I was so scared, Quinn, I thought I was going to die." "But you did not," Quinn said. "You survived. You are stronger than you know, Zelda. You always have been." Zelda turned in his arms to face him. "I survived because of you. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." Quinn cupped her face in his weathered hands, the same hands that had pulled her from the snow all those years ago. "And you saved me right back. Before you, I was just going through the motions, building a ranch because I did not know what else to do. But you gave me purpose. You gave me love. You gave me a family. We saved each other." They kissed, a kiss full of 35 years of love and partnership and devotion. When they pulled apart, both of them had tears in their eyes, but they were happy tears. In 1918, the world was at war, and even their remote corner of Wyoming felt the effects. Jamie enlisted, determined to do his part, and Zelda spent many sleepless nights worrying about her youngest son. But Jamie came home safely in 1919, changed by what he had seen but grateful to be back on the ranch. Tommy's sons, now grown, stayed to work the ranch, ensuring that the Kelly legacy would continue. Rose and Robert had 2 daughters who were making their own ways in the world, both of them attending college, something that made Zelda incredibly proud. In the spring of 1922, Quinn and Zelda celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary. The celebration was smaller this time, just family, but no less meaningful. They were surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The family they had created was large and loving, and it all stemmed from that one moment in the snow. Quinn was 72 now, Zelda 68. They moved slowly, tired easily, but they were still together, still in love. They sat at the head of the long table, watching their family laugh and talk, and Quinn reached for Zelda's hand. "Not bad for a half-frozen woman and a cowboy who happened to be riding by," he said with a grin. Zelda laughed. Not bad at all. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Emma, now a young woman of 26 and married with 2 children of her own, approached her grandparents. "Grandma, Grandpa, I want you to know how grateful I am for both of you," she said, her eyes shining with tears. "You built something beautiful here, not just the ranch but the family, the love. You showed all of us what a real partnership looks like, what real love looks like. I hope I can have even half of what you two have with my husband." Zelda pulled her granddaughter into a hug. "You already do, sweetheart. I see it in how you are with him, with your children. We are so proud of you." Quinn hugged Emma too, then looked around at all the family gathered. "Your grandmother and I have been blessed beyond measure. We started with nothing but each other and built all of this. And the best part is knowing it will continue long after we are gone. You all carry our love forward." That night, as Quinn and Zelda prepared for bed, moving through the familiar routines they had established over 45 years, Zelda looked at her husband and felt a wave of such intense love and gratitude that it nearly overwhelmed her. "Quinn," she said softly, and he turned to her. "Thank you for riding out that morning. Thank you for not passing me by. Thank you for saying you are coming home with me. Thank you for every day since." Quinn came to her and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Thank you for surviving. Thank you for staying. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for loving me." They held each other for a long moment, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. In the years that followed, Quinn and Zelda continued to slow down, but they were content. They spent their days surrounded by family, watching new generations grow. They sat on their porch every evening that weather allowed, holding hands and watching the sunset. Quinn's health began to fail in the winter of 1925. Nothing dramatic, just the slow winding down of a body that had worked hard for over 70 years. He had trouble breathing sometimes, and his heart was not as strong as it once was. The doctor said there was nothing to be done except to make him comfortable. Zelda refused to leave his side. She tended to him with the same devotion he had shown her when he had first found her in the snow. She read to him, talked to him, held his hand. Their children and grandchildren visited constantly, filling the house with life and love. On a warm spring evening in May of 1925, as the sun was setting over the Wyoming landscape they both loved so much, Quinn looked at Zelda and smiled. "It has been a good life," he said, his voice weak but content. "The best life," Zelda agreed, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Zelda Kelly," Quinn said. "I loved you from the moment I saw you in the snow, and I will love you beyond this life." "I love you too," Zelda said, holding his hand tightly. "Forever and always." Quinn closed his eyes, that small smile still on his face, and slipped peacefully away. Zelda sat with him for a long time, holding his hand, saying her goodbyes to the man who had saved her life, and then made it worth living. The funeral was well attended, with people coming from all over the county to pay their respects to Quinn Kelly, a man who had been respected and loved by all who knew him. Zelda stood strong through it all, supported by her children and grandchildren. In the months that followed, Zelda grieved deeply. The house felt empty without Quinn's presence, and she missed him with an ache that never quite went away. But she also felt grateful for the years they had had, for the life they had built, for the love they had shared. She stayed on at the ranch, of course. It was her home, and she could not imagine leaving. Tommy and Sarah moved into the main house with her, keeping her company, making sure she was cared for. But Zelda remained independent, still tending her garden, still keeping up with the bookkeeping, still sitting on the porch every evening. She lived to see her great-great-grandchildren, lived to see the ranch continue to prosper under Tommy and his son's management. She told her story to anyone who would listen, the story of a woman left to die in the snow and the cowboy who saved her. It became a family legend, passed down through the generations. On a cold January morning in 1929, exactly 50 years after Quinn had found her in the snow, Zelda woke feeling peaceful. She knew, somehow, that this was her last day. She was 84 years old and she was tired, but she was also content. She spent the day quietly, saying goodbye to her children and grandchildren, though they did not know that was what she was doing. She looked through old photographs, touching the faces of people long gone. She sat on the porch one last time, wrapped in blankets, looking out over the land that had been her home for half a century. That evening, she went to bed early. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought she saw Quinn standing at the foot of the bed, young and strong and smiling, his hand outstretched to her. "Ready to come home with me?" he asked, and his voice was warm and loving. "Always," Zelda whispered. She closed her eyes and did not wake again, passing peacefully in her sleep, reunited at last with the man who had saved her life and taught her how to truly live. The family buried her next to Quinn on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could rest together with a view of everything they had built. The headstones were simple but elegant, reading, "Quinn Thomas Kelly, 1853–1925, beloved husband, father, grandfather, you're coming home with me Zelda Marie Kelly, 1845–1929, beloved wife, mother, grandmother always years later, great-great-grandchildren would visit those graves and hear the story of how their ancestors met. The story of a woman left to die in the snow and a cowboy who could have ridden past, but chose to stop. The story of how one moment of compassion changed two lives and created a legacy that would endure for generations. The Kelly Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the family, each generation adding to it while honoring the foundation that Quinn and Zelda had built. And on cold winter mornings, when the snow fell thick and the wind howled, the family members would look out their windows and think of that morning in 1879, when everything began. They would think of Zelda, alone and terrified in the snow, and Quinn, riding out on what seemed like an ordinary morning. They would think of how easily things could have gone differently, how Quinn could have taken a different route or ridden out at a different time. They would think of how blessed they all were that he had been there, that he had stopped, that he had said those 5 simple words that changed everything. "You are coming home with me." It was a story of rescue, but also of love. Of two people who found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful together. Of partnership and devotion, of weathering storms both literal and figurative, of creating a family and a home from nothing but determination and love. And it was a reminder, passed down through the generations of Kellys, that the smallest acts of kindness can change the world. That choosing to help someone, to offer compassion to a stranger, can create ripples that extend far beyond what we can imagine. Quinn and Zelda's love story became a part of the land itself, woven into the fabric of the ranch they had built. Visitors to the property, even those who were not family, could feel it somehow. There was a warmth to the place, a sense of love and welcome that transcended the physical buildings and land. The story was told and retold, each generation adding their own understanding to it. Children grew up hearing about the great-great-grandmother who had survived being left in the snow and the great-great-grandfather who had saved her. They learned about hard work and dedication, about building something from nothing, about the power of love to transform lives. The main house still stood, expanded and renovated over the years, but retaining its original character. The bedroom where Quinn and Zelda had slept for 45 years, where they had whispered their dreams and fears to each other in the darkness, where they had comforted each other through loss and celebrated through joy, was kept as a sort of shrine. Not in a morbid way, but as a reminder of where it all began. The porch where Quinn had first told Zelda he loved her, where they had sat together thousands of evenings watching the sunset, remained the heart of the house. Generations of Kellys continued the tradition, sitting there in the evenings, often in the same rocking chairs that Quinn had made with his own hands. And every January, on the anniversary of the day Quinn had found Zelda, the family would gather for a special dinner. They would tell the story once more, making sure the youngest generation knew where they came from. They would raise a glass to Quinn and Zelda, to the love that had started it all, to the legacy they had left behind. The ranch itself was a testament to what Quinn and Zelda had built. It was one of the most successful in the region, known for quality cattle and horses, but also for the way it was run. The Kelly family treated their workers with respect, paid fair wages, and created a sense of community. It was the way Quinn had always run it, and his descendants honored that. The land that had nearly been Zelda's grave had instead become her home, her sanctuary, the place where she had flourished and thrived. The snow that had almost killed her had melted into the soil, feeding the grass that fed the cattle, becoming part of the endless cycle of life on the ranch. And on cold winter mornings, when the snow fell soft and thick, turning the world white and pristine, the Kellys would look out their windows and think of that dawn in 1879. They would think of how close they had come to never existing, how their entire family tree depended on Quinn choosing to ride out that morning, on him choosing to stop, on him choosing to help. It made them grateful, made them mindful of the power of their own choices. It reminded them to be kind to strangers, to offer help when they could, because you never knew when that help might change a life, might create something beautiful and lasting. The story of Quinn and Zelda Kelly was more than just a family history. It was a love story for the ages, a tale of rescue and redemption, of two souls finding each other against all odds. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, when all seems lost, hope can appear. Sometimes hope wears a cowboy hat and rides a roan horse. Sometimes hope says, "You are coming home with me." And sometimes, if you are very lucky, that hope becomes love, and that love becomes a lifetime, and that lifetime becomes a legacy that endures long after you are gone. The wind still blew across the Wyoming prairie, carrying the scent of sage and grass. The stars still came out each night, countless and bright. The seasons still turned, winter to spring, summer to fall, the endless cycle of life on the land. And in the cemetery on the hill, Quinn and Zelda Kelly rested side by side, together in death as they had been in life. Their story was over, but it lived on in every descendant who carried their blood, in every person who heard the tale and was inspired by it, in the very land itself. They had started with nothing but each other and built an empire of love. And that, in the end, was the greatest legacy of all.